Hey guys, I'm Nick with Mantis Defense. Today we're going over the minutia and brief level overview of what you're going to see when it comes to applying for NFA tax stamp, which includes a Form 1 and a Form 4. You're going to go ahead and include with your package to the ATF, regardless if it's a Form 1 or a Form 4, you're going to go ahead and include a few things, including a set of fingerprints, passport photos, a bit of personal information, including like your chief of police, FFL, other things like that. And all of this is to go ahead and allow you to have some pretty cool items as a normal Joe Schmo, like I am. Just to give you guys some brief background here, this is a PS90 that was cut down from a 16-inch P90. And this was what we call a Form 1, which basically means that you are applying to manufacture and register a firearm. In my case, when it comes to a Form 1, you're typically going to go ahead and see that in terms of you have an AR lower receiver and you want to go ahead and put a shorter barrel on it. Or in the case of something like this, you have a long barrel, you chop it down after you receive your approval from the ATF on your Form 1. Within it, there are a couple other different items that can fall within the NFA. Those items include your short-barreled shotguns, your short-barreled rifles, your destructive devices, any other weapons, a few different things associated with that, but those are basically going to be your main NFA items that you're going to see us have. Anyway, going on with that, here's another example of an NFA item you can go ahead and have. This is a Silencerco suppressor. Just I have it rocking with my PS90 when a time calls. And this is what you would see on something called a Form 4. A Form 4 is effectively you are transferring, i.e. receiving ownership of an already made NFA item. And that's not something that you are doing in the context of, say, cutting down a barrel like you would on a P90, or if you were to go ahead and put a, say, 10.5-inch barrel on an AR lower that's already a rifle, but not an SBR. So you kind of get the idea of seeing what a manufactured item looks like that you as a normal person would do versus a already produced item from some sort of dealer. Another example of some NFA items. This is a LMT 14.5 SBR with a LMT 40mm grenade launcher beneath. Now, both these items, i.e. this barrel being under 16 inches and this being a destructive device, are examples of things that you can do either on a Form 1 or a Form 4. In my case, I did both Form 1s for both of these. I manufactured these items. Manufactured these items being that for the case of what I mentioned earlier, with your short-barreled rifles in this 14.5, I went ahead and applied for the lower and got that approved, and then I was able to go ahead and smack on this 14.5-inch barrel. Now, associated with your Form 1s and Form 4s, there are two different ways that you as a normal individual can go ahead and apply for these. Whether one, you're going in as an individual, or two, if you're going in as a trust. With a trust, I personally do not have experience with that. However, you can coordinate with an FFL and kind of get more details behind that, but after you watch this video and get a little bit more information. As an individual, it's quite easy in terms of I don't need to coordinate with other folks, say within the trust, or need to gather fingerprints, additional photos, and do some more coordination. It's all solely on me to go ahead and grab. So in my case, in my use case, that is much easier, much more feasible. But the downside is that if you file as an individual, you are the sole person allowed to handle these firearms in terms of like unattended. I can't basically loan this to somebody else and let them use it. Whereas if you were, say, in a trust and I'm with, say, my brother, and my brother's also on this trust, he can go ahead and take possession of, say, this PS90 or any of these items on this table with no problems. I don't have something like that, so the individual is probably the best route in my case. There's a couple different things that you need to identify, which comes down to how you apply as an individual or a trust. Again, I'm going to cater strictly to the individual side because that's my experience base. With your individual, you can file in one of two ways, either A, paper, or B, e-file. Paper, when you apply for paper, it's effectively you go ahead and you have your fingerprint forms, your actual tax stamp that you're applying for, physical photos that you need to produce. Those are physically given to your FFL they will work with you to go ahead, compile your package together, and get that sent off to the ATF via, snail mail, USPS, whatever. E-file for Form 1 as an individual, right now-ish, you're seeing maybe 3-6 weeks, something within that window. Individual paper on a Form 1, you might see a little bit longer. Now, when it comes down to a Form 4, your Form 4 is, again, for those manufactured NFA items. You're typically seeing things upwards of a year, perhaps more, but lately, as of, say, April 2020-ish, filming of this video, you're seeing some things come back in as little as 3 months, which is impressive. But, again, these are all things that you can go ahead and do and work out to get. Now, again, going back to the e-file for one quick moment, with e-file, the difference there is that you don't need to work directly with your FFL to gather the documents, i.e. your fingerprint cards, your passport photos, your actual filling out of the stamp. You don't need to work with your FFL directly to do that. You need to go ahead and go to the ATF website. Resources are available out there to direct you there. And you can go and fill out that paperwork by yourself in a comfort of your own home or Starbucks, wherever you're at. The difference is that you still do need to acquire those physical FT258s, which are those fingerprint cards. And those fingerprint cards you can do by yourself, or you can go to a professional and then go ahead and take care of you and making sure that your fingerprints are legible and you won't experience any sort of delay associated with your submitted Form 1. Outside of the paper filing, you can go ahead and work with your FFL, depending if they have this capability or not. They may have something called a Silencer Shop kiosk. These are kiosks set up by Silencer Shop, which is a pretty big distributor and retailer for silencers and other NFA items and whatnot. They have this thing called a Silencer Shop kiosk, and that's basically a terminal that's set up where you can effectively do your one-stop shop for filing your Form 4s via paper at your FFL without speaking, touching, anything like that. You do it all at this kiosk. There is some things you need to do on the back end just before arriving there, i.e. making an account and going ahead and taking your photos and doing all that. But this is all stuff that you can do at the Silencer Shop kiosks, but it kind of makes it a little bit faster to go ahead and do some of these things at home. There are other resources online that go into this a little bit more detail. As I mentioned before, this is a two-part thing. You have one, the barrel, and two, the receiver. On the back here, just like you would with, say, an AR lower, you have, same deal here, of your LNC receiver. And this receiver is a serialized item that you will go ahead and receive. When you purchase, again, this LNC receiver, it's the same exact thing as purchasing an AR lower, a stripped AR lower, because it is a Title III firearm, which in FFL speak, that's their own thing. But for us, we just know it as a receiver. We'll just take it as that, right? With your receiver here, it's just basically an AR lower. You transfer it just as you would with an AR lower. You go ahead, have whatever your local laws might be, whether it be a cash and carry or if it be a waiting period or what have you. Treat it exactly the same as a stripped AR lower. Now, when you go ahead and receive not the AR lower, but the LMT M203 receiver that is effectively the same as an AR lower, you will go ahead and then submit your Form 1 to the ATF, just as you would for an SBR. When you get that approved, which is, again, taken the same way as an SBR for, say, an AR lower or any other Form 1 device, you go ahead, get that approval, then you go ahead and hit up your dealer of choice and purchase the barrel. After that, you put them together, which is pretty simple. There are instructions usually included, or you can find one online. And once you go ahead and put them together, you have a functioning M203. Now, specifically within Maryland, outside of, say, the minutia of regulated firearms and other things like that, there is one specific deal that is called the Maryland Copycat Weapon Law. A weapon that is otherwise legal in Maryland, if it is a magazine-fed, center-fired rifle, it must meet no less than 2 of these requirements. If it meets 2 or more of these 3 requirements, it's bad. So, the rifle, again, must be a center-fired magazine fed weapon, and it cannot be under 29 inches. Again, for a typical rifle and SBR. Maryland SBRs cannot be under 29 inches. So, you got some things to contend with, right? Now again, those 2 or more features that apply to this are going to get you in trouble. In the case that we have here, this is not a folding stock. This is a, good old buffer tube. This is a fat, surefire muzzle brake that doesn't hide flash, but it, helps with recoil quite well. And here's that flare launcher or grenade launcher, right? So again, I'm well within the Maryland law here. Again, a thing to consider here in Maryland specifically for, say, your ARs in 5.56 only, your AR rifles in 5.56 have to be what they're called H-bar, heavy profile, something like that. However, within Maryland, you can also build an AR pistol just fine, but an SBR kind of lies in some weird middle ground. But effectively what that means in Maryland is that you don't need a heavy barrel like you would with a traditional AR 5.56 rifle in Maryland. With an SBR, you can go and have a pencil profile barrel just fine. Some weird minutia associated with that, but that's simply the way the law is right now in Maryland as of, spring 2020. We've gone over the difference between your Form 1s and your Form 4s, how you're going to go ahead and apply to each of them, again, as an individual. And then we've gone over a little bit more about some different things here, specifically with the M203, in terms of how you as a normal person can get that. And then finally, I went over some local level stuff dealing with Maryland-specific copycat laws that, allow me and you to have some things just like this. I'm Nick with Mantis Defense, and run fast, shoot straight. Thanks, guys.
Fucking A. Shooter, you are clear.